It's interesting because I feel like most of the time people who usually have kind of opposing strengths often connect with one another best because they're not fighting for that spot.
You guys, this episode was so much fun to record with my business partner, Shalane Carter. I know you're going to get so much out of it. Just a little life update. As I am recording this intro, we are trying to furiously and frantically get ready to go to Arizona for a family reunion. My husband's family, most of them live in Alabama, but a couple of them live also in Bisbee. So we're kind of finding this happy medium. It's not really a happy medium in terms of like geographically on the United States map, but it's much easier for them to fly into Phoenix from Alabama than it is to go to Bisbee. So long story short, we're going to Phoenix, Arizona this weekend for our family reunion. And I was thinking in my mind, oh, I'll just, I'll record this little life update in the morning. It'll be no big thing. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, MaKenzie, now that you have a baby, there's no such thing as just like quickly recording something in the morning. So lesson learned, on top of leaving for a trip and doing those last minute packing, it's not a good idea to try to squeeze something like this in. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time. I haven't seen he has 3 sisters, so it's quite a large family, and I haven't seen the sisters or their children in a while. And best part is that my son Finn, who's about to be 4 months old, his cousin Jean is only 2 weeks older than him. So it's so sweet that he has a cousin that's kind of close to him in age. I know at 4 months they probably won't even realize that they're meeting other people, but someday I hope that they realize like how cool it is to have a cousin so close in age. And then when I come back from Phoenix, Arizona, I'm returning. We're clipping the trip just a little bit short because my teacher, Johnny Kest, is actually coming to Las Vegas for the first time ever. He has never come here, and I'm so excited to take his class again. It's always nice to be in the space and in the presence and proximity of your teacher. So I'll be taking his class next Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to that. The true story submission for today, everybody, is actually from our guest, Shalane Carter. She has submitted this pretty amazing story. I feel like a lot of us can relate to a situation like this. So I'm going to give it a read. She said, one of my favorite stories as a teacher that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to is having someone complain about some part of your class. To set the stage, this class was really well attended and consistent with lots of regulars in it. This new, older gentleman shows up, but clearly looks like he's a professional in the yoga world. He is donning his patterned leggings, he has a tank top on with some kind of yoga phrase, and is prepping for class by doing headstands nonchalantly. I didn't get a chance to approach him before class, but he seemed seasoned and was conversing with some of the other members who seemed to know him by name. So I figured he had attended this style of class before. Now, this particular vinyasa style is a little more power focused. My teacher during trainings literally said, teach the sequence, then crank the volume and let them flow. It has freestyle moments as well as more current style of music. So I began this class and instruct everyone to find child's pose or some place where they can feel comfortable. After a few moments of silence, I start to instruct their breathing and slowly start to fade in a soft, gentle tune. After walking them through some cat and cows and spinal warm-ups, I began the part where they start to move through some of the shapes on their own for about one song. This is the moment where the music gets turned up a little bit and the students start to move on their own. However, as soon as I turn up the volume, he whipped around to look and find where I was in the room, only to start to mime movements and mouth words in my direction. He continues to flail his arms in the air and points at his ears. He kept mouthing, "It's too loud. It's too loud." So I looked at the volume on my phone and the volume on the media player, and this was definitely not loud. I gave him a little bit of a nod to acknowledge him and say non-verbally that I had heard him. I turned it down one click and carried on with my class. The gentleman continued. Every time we would move into freestyle and the volume would get turned up, he would flail his arms like a child, throwing a temper tantrum. He stayed throughout the entire class, but made a beeline out of there as soon as I opened the doors. I wanted to touch base with him so I could clarify that this was typical of this style. And maybe he just hadn't practiced this style before, so that if he went to another class, he wouldn't be alarmed at the same sound and volume. I also think he was trying not to have this conversation because he left so quickly that he left his yoga tank top on the floor. I started the conversation by saying, "Hey, I'm sorry if the volume was too loud for you, but this style typically does have a little more modern and free flow movements where the volume gets turned up." He turned to me and said he's done yoga all over the world for the past 20 years, and he's never been in a class that had volume this loud. But then he proceeded to say that it was a really great class. So I thanked him for the compliment, returned his shirt, and we chatted for a bit. But I will never forget the flailing arms in the middle of class because of one person's opinion of the volume. Moral of the story is you're never going to please everyone, all 20 years of their practice. Do all things with love, and you'll leave with good karma, even if it upsets others. What a great true story submission. Thank you to Shalane. And I'm so excited for you to hear much more from her within this episode. If you yourself would like to submit a true story, it's really simple. All you have to do is either head to my Instagram, Master Your Yoga Teaching, and type true story, 2 words, on any comment, or you can DM me true story or even reply to a story. And I'll walk you through that full process. It's really simple. Or if that sounds altogether too intimidating to head to Instagram, it's also, the link is in the show notes. So check it out below. It says submit a true story. I would love to hear from you and potentially feature your true story on one of the upcoming episodes. In today's chat with Shalane, we dive into everything Rechaka Retreats. Here's what you can expect within this episode. We tell you the story behind us becoming business partners and creating Rechaka Retreats. What makes Rechaka Retreats unique? Costa Rica recap and examples of how to plan an unforgettable and cohesive retreat experience. The one book that every yoga teacher needs to read. 4 pillars of dharma. How to find your life's purpose if you can't seem to identify it. The defining differences between someone who's living their dharma and someone who's not. Hands down, the hardest part to living on purpose. The secret to a successful, happy life. What our retreat goers are saying about our retreats, and how you can join us in Tulum. And don't forget that at the end of today's episode, I will be announcing the 3 winners of the review raffle. Stay tuned all the way to the end to see if you are about to win $100. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. Let's dive in. Hey yogis, MaKenzie Fly here, mom, yogapreneur, teacher trainer, retreat leader, and your guide to master your yoga teaching. This podcast is your weekly dose of actionable wisdom and candid chats with industry experts. Learn to connect deeper, weave yogic magic, and lead by example. Full disclosure, I'm still mastering it too, but together we'll skyrocket your impact and income. Hit subscribe and let's grow, one episode at a time. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to MYYT, where you are learning to level up your yoga teaching one masterful class at a time. I am so excited for today's chat with a dear, dear friend and basically my work wife. We spent a ton of time together and I just absolutely adore her, and it's amazing to have her on the podcast. We've got so much to kind of share with you today, but just a little bit about her. Shalane Carter, the one, the only, is a healer. She's a business mentor and a mom, starting her own business in the cosmetology world about 11 years ago. She realized her gift with people. So true. And over the years, the ways in which she used her gifts shifted into what now she teaches is the energy of business And she utilizes the energetic body healing and the chakra system, regulating the nervous system and liberating you from limiting stories and leaning into your natural talents to help you build a business that's aligned with your unique energetic blueprint. When she's not helping others in business, she's teaching yoga, traveling, at a kid's sports game, or sipping coffee in between handstands in her kitchen. That is so true. Well, thank you so much, Shalane, for hopping on the podcast. We are so thrilled to have you.
I'm excited. This feels like a very full circle moment. MaKenzie will tell you a little bit kind of our backstory, but it feels like kind of this like nice ribbon to be here on the podcast and touching base with all of your yoga teachers who are really starting to master their yoga teaching.
Yeah, it really does feel full circle. I love that imagery, and it really is so true. And I'm a walking billboard and living testament to some of Shalane's work. We have a kind of a long history and a long story of working and being near each other. But one of the real influences that she had on me was kind of helping me start to utilize yoga teaching as more of a business. And so I really did kind of go through all of her business strategy, and can say that there is some work for all of us to do when it comes to the energy of business. And I feel like it's a really unique aspect that's not talked about that often. And so you just bring a really important piece of the puzzle that a lot of people, I encourage you to take like a deeper look at it, because we don't realize how much of it is subconscious and how much of it is energy beneath some of these things that kind of hold you back, especially when we're talking in terms of business.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's a really great way to put it, actually. Like, it's interesting. It's in yoga, which I'm sure, all of you will have attest to kind of this idea that the micro represents the macro and like vice versa. So kind of when I'm looking at things, it's kind of that same thing of what's happening within yourself that you're then pouring into your business without even realizing it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, today I specifically wanted to feature and have you on the podcast today so that we could talk about Rechaka Retreats. This is actually, yeah, a company that Shalane and I started. It's a wellness company that plans, designs, hosts, and facilitates international yoga retreats. And we have a lot to tell you about it because it has it's become so much more than I think we not necessarily intended, but it's just become so much more in the best of ways.
I feel like intended, like more than we intended is actually a great way to put it. Cause we were like, okay, how do we take like our love for yoga? How do we take that and actually make it so we can like do something more? Like we want to travel. We want to talk about some of these like deep conversations. Like, how do we do that? And we were like, aha, retreats. And now it's just like evolved.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to hear it from your perspective. I feel like it'd be a fun treat for me to hear how it kind of came into creation, how it came into form. But how did Rechaka Retreats form? Where did we start? We started from the bottom, and now we're here. What has
And
that?
yeah,
Yeah, what has that kind of journey looked like from your perspective?
well, I feel like from my perspective, I took yoga teacher training from MaKenzie years ago. And I remember, and I've told her this before, there was like a moment where I was sitting there. So part of like what I do and part of my practice is I'm psychic, see dead people sometimes, all that jazz. And so had a moment where I'm sitting next to her and I don't know, you might have been like one person down and all of a sudden it like dropped into my mind. I was like, this person will be important in your life. And, when you're just going through yoga teacher training, like at this point, she's just my teacher. Like we really don't have a friendship. Not that we weren't friendly and friends, but it's not like it is now. And to kind of have that, it just seemed a little off. So I just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like I thought that this was just something maybe I was thinking or hoping or whatever. And then fast forward, we were sharing a lot on social media, like different books that we were reading. And we kind of maintained this friendship post yoga teacher training. And then we're like, well, we're reading all the same books. And so then we decide that we're going to do a book club because we can't be the only two people that want to talk about these like metaphysical books and like all of this stuff and like have these like really great, we would sit here and like message back and forth about these like aha moments. And we're like, we should get people in on this.
We sound so nerdy.
We are nerdy. So just so you guys know, like we love to like get really geeky on like certain stuff. So anything yoga we can geek out over for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, we were both like teaching yoga at this point. And we were like, well, again, like let's do this book club. So people started coming and it was kind of like hit or miss, but they loved like the conversation. But it was almost like people would come together and you and I would be like, great, let's just dive into like soul searching deep shit. And they were like, on a Tuesday? I don't know. It like took them a while to like crack open the shells. I felt like some people were like, finally, like, good, I can have some of these conversations. But we were like, how do we? And then it kind of came to us. We're like, well, we want to kind of do this, but like in a bigger way. And I think having us as facilitators to open up those conversations is really kind of the way to go because we're very comfortable in that space of like really like let's get into soul contracts and let's get into why we're here and let's talk about all these like big concepts, but make it practical and applicable to your life. And so then we were like, well, how about a retreat? And we hosted our first one. We're like, well, give it a go. It was like, well, we'll do a little trial run. We'll go to Sedona. It's only a couple hours away. Big hit, sold out. And we were like, I think we're onto something. So then it kind of evolved from there to other retreats and a festival and merchandise that's coming and have kind of been sold, t-shirts, crop tops, all that jazz. So, I mean, all from a book club, you guys. Dream big. Dream big.
Yeah. No, it has been such a beautiful journey and one of a lot of evolutions and reiterations of itself. And for all the yoga teachers that are out there, I think this is kind of an important thing. When you are embarking on either starting a business or finding a business partner, I joked at the beginning that she's my work wife. It really is like a whole other marriage. And it's important.
We really are like, I need to communicate something with you and I don't want it to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. And you really do need these periods and pockets in the development of that relationship that feels a little bit like dating. Because I fondly think back about the book club era as like, we're just testing each other out. We're kind of seeing how one another works and how we communicate with one another. And from there, it was like an engagement period. And then we went full throttle for it. True, with Rechaka Retreats. So I really encourage you, if you're thinking about finding a business partner, try, like, maybe don't go for the big shebang right out of the gate. Try a couple of other smaller options because it is challenging. Just like a marriage is kind of challenging. It comes with a lot of vulnerability to express some ideas. And then it takes a lot of communication skills, like Shalane is speaking to say, hey, I noticed that this is working. Hey, this is not working. And to have that sort of open channel of dialogue and communication and to be receptive to feedback always.
Oh my gosh,
I think that's been really key in kind of our development. And I just wanted to say that because I know a lot of yoga teachers that are listening are like, oh, I feel like I might want to do something similar of just creating something else beyond the yoga studio. It doesn't always, it doesn't always, I don't want to be like sad, but sometimes it doesn't work out because of the partnership.
Yeah. And it's really like, it's interesting. I've done things with other people. And it has to work on so many levels when you're wanting to do things. So even doing something like doing a workshop together with somebody or co-facilitating a class tells you a lot about how somebody plans, how somebody organizes, how somebody handles a disgruntled customer, like somebody who's upset with the purchase or complaining or wants a refund or building the thing out, like ideas and stuff like that, because it's like, it has to be a give and take of both hearing each other and also being heard. And sometimes just in relationships in general, this is how, like, again, when we talk about like toxic relationships, getting into stuff like that, of like noticing that, do you feel the same way in the partnership in your business that you might feel in relationships or friendships? And, not trying to create the same theme or the same, reiterate the same issues that you're already having. So it's key to just try it out. Like, nothing's forever. You can always get divorced and dissolve the partnership. The end. So try a workshop. Like, make it easy, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I love that you kind of spoke to all the things that Rechaka has kind of already done. It has been, I mean, when I think back, I'm like, we were crazy. We were a little bit
We were
overexcited.
ambitious. We were
Ambitious is a
ambitious.
really good word to describe it. We launched, I guess, Rechaka Retreats at the beginning of, was it 2022?
Mhm.
And we did one retreat in the spring in Sedona. And then the one in the fall was in Las Vegas, which is actually where Shalane and I live. Then in 2023, we hosted three retreats, one in Costa Rica, one in California, and then we went back to Sedona because it was just such a in demand location. Yoga retreats are just so nice in Sedona. It's so energetically charged. But then to top it all off, we also hosted the Rechaka Yoga Fest in Las Vegas. So a huge festival that had vendors, that had different teachers, day long, 3 day long events from dusk until dawn, or I guess
Literally, we were
the other
there
way
at
around.
sunrise and like after the sunset.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. But I can't even believe all that we've done, and we have so many plans for the future and ways in which that it's still even going to shift and morph and grow. So again, cannot reiterate enough how just keep following what interests you and keep leaning into one another's strengths, and find a partner that kind of like checks and balances those strengths too. Because we,
Mm,
we all come to the table with things that we do well. And also, we have blind spots, all of us. So it's important to surround yourself with people, but mostly importantly, in a partnership with somebody who can help you stay in the right lane.
yeah. And just like compliment, just like, you don't want it's interesting because I feel like most of the time people who are have usually have kind of opposing strengths often connect with one another best because they're not fighting for that spot. Say you want to host a workshop with somebody, one person can be really great at maybe like music that's really meaningful and like they totally get like how to create this like epic playlist, and the other person's like, hey, I have this killer sequence to like put with it. Why don't we do something like this? I feel like this would go really well with this song because of some of these lyrics. And so it's like finding people that you both can shine, and
Hmm.
it's not necessarily a competition too, which I think sometimes when you're doing the same thing, I find that that's usually where most people find the pitfall, is that they find a
Hmm.
partner that they feel like they're competing with rather than they're both amplifying one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And let it have more of that collaborative energy.
Yeah.
It's so key. And something that Shalane and I have been talking about in terms of the evolution and where's Rechaka going next, not just with retreats. We're thinking about maybe even creating something for yoga teachers who are interested in taking their teaching career to the next level as far as hosting retreats, because with Rechaka, we have already built a six-figure business in less than 2 years. And it came from, we knew we were on the right track, like Shalane said, right out of the gate with Sedona. It sold out in what? I mean, how many days?
The first one, yeah, it was all of like 10 days and it was sold
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
And
2 weeks.
yeah, just wild. Like our Costa Rica one, again, like we sold it twice. Basically, we sold it to, I think, two or three people had to drop out. It was like medical something, like time off work, whatever it was. We have basically sold out our retreats, had people drop out for personal reasons, filled it back again. Like we've sold them multiple times over. So we're
Mhm.
really excited about what's to come to teach you how to do those similar systems within
Yeah.
your business if you're wanting to do those things.
Yeah, and just want to share because it is such a fulfilling. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Shalane, but I know how much you get out of hosting retreats. It's so fulfilling as a yoga teacher to create that space. And I'm so lucky because back to your sort of macro micro thing, Shalane. Shalane is like the visionary for us. She's like that big picture person. And I tease her. I'm sometimes like, Shalane, like you're such a visionary that you're like, hop on the motorbike and you go from like 0 to 60. And sometimes I'm just like, wait a second, let me get my helmet, girl. Like, wait for me. She's such a big picture person, which we need, to have that vision of the future. And I'm a little bit more of the micro, like I want to go through everything with a fine tooth comb, and I really appreciate like the detail side of stuff. And it does sort of complement each other in that regard, or at least I hope you feel that way, Shalane.
Yeah, eventually we're both going the speed limit. Want to go 100 over. She wants to go like 25 under, and we like meet in the middle at 75. Eventually we're both on the motorbike. We have our helmets on. We're like, okay, let's go.
That is so funny. So, you guys, we just really wanted to give you a taste into what a Rechaka retreat is like and kind of recap one of the retreats that we did in Costa Rica. What really makes Rechaka retreats stand out, at least to me, is that our retreats are designed with honestly like one concept in mind and one sort of philosophical teaching or one meaningful message at the heart, that then everything that you do on the retreat is organized around. The theme of the retreat is, and that theme is always different depending upon where we are. We consider the location, and then also we enhance it. And I think this is where the book club element gets pulled through, is we always like to support the theme and the retreat with a recommended reading so that it's encouraging people. Why
So
are you
nerdy of us. So
so
nerdy.
nerdy of us? Oh my gosh. So, but really, we want to encourage people to continue growing and to continue seeking truth. And some of these books that we recommend, we hope guide people to that. What do you think, Shalane?
Yeah, I love that. We're like, and we pick a book. Also, I think that is really beneficial because when people go on a retreat, they have a lot of downtime. And
Mm-hmm.
so several of them have been like, oh, I've been reading this. Like, I'm going to finish this on the retreat. So I think it also gives people this opportunity to like have a good excuse to really take time for themselves to do some self discovery. And so I think the theming that we always kind of aim is that you leave the retreat more like yourself. You leave the retreat with less baggage, less bullshit, less stories, less whatever it is, and you really come back as more because
Mm-hmm.
of it. And I feel like that's part of the reason that we do this is that we're not really interested in being like a yoga on the beach and then chug 3 margaritas and then get sunburnt and like not make it back for sound bath type of retreats. And not that there's anything wrong with those types where you just show up, you do yoga in the morning, and then you do whatever during the whole day. But ours, we always want it to be some very experiential and kind of like
Mm-hmm.
MaKenzie was saying, like being really methodical and thoughtful about the entire experience, not just showing up for a tropical yoga class. And I think that's one of those things too, when, as yoga teachers, when you're creating anything, whether it be a yoga class, a retreat, a workshop, to be mindful of the ripple effect. How does this then track? Again, here's my like, we're going to talk 5 years down the road, but like, how does this track to where I actually want to be? Does this support those things? And like,
Mm-hmm.
we want people in our community that want to have these deep conversations, that are interested in really seeking their own truth, that are interested in like peeling back these layers, and being the most authentic person that they can be. And so I think that's part of what also makes us unique is that element that it's goes beyond just having a concept so much as it is an experiential transformation too.
Absolutely. And I think the book is just another way that we make yoga more than just a practice within the four corners of the yoga mat. And the book gives us this lens to look through and say, hey, in what ways am I living? Are they in, like Shalane is saying, are they in alignment with where I want to go? And if they're not, are there other tools that I could use to recalibrate to the trajectory that I'm actually meaning to go and wanting to go? And so that's how Shalane and I really consider a yoga practice. It's a lot more of an art of living, a way of living, than this moving and breathing thing that you do on the mat. It's not to say like that is yoga, but it's just like one small piece of yoga that usually just helps you get to those deeper layers and those deeper realms.
You always say like the asana practice or the physical yoga is like the gateway drug. It's like that entry point for people where they start to get a taste of what the essence of yoga and what yoga feels like as a sensation, as an experience, not just yoga as a class.
Mm-hmm. And it's just so nice. I mean, a lot of people are kind of interested in yoga teacher training, even if they have no desire to necessarily teach yoga. They want to go through the process for the self-development and the transformation and growth. And the way we design our retreats give you a hint of that. Give you a taste of the YTT experience, because we talk about some of these more concepts, not necessarily in like a boring sit down lecture sort of energy and environment, but just in like opening up the floor to say, hey, here's this concept, what do you think about it? And let people kind of like mull things over. I think if unless you're in a yoga teacher training, we're not often given that opportunity. And it's the most amazing thing to see. We've seen so many people just be like, I don't know, you can just see.
Yeah, like at first there's like this like sheet that it's like on the Wizard of Oz when they want to like peek behind the curtain type of feel. They're like, can I say it? Can I share it?
Yeah, yeah, I don't even know it. Like you can just see this moment of insight, or see like the dots connecting, or like things clicking. And it's really really cool to just be in a space where you're in a circle with other people who have the same intention. Like they want to experience some healing. And
Mm.
you're in a vulnerable space. You're kind of sharing some things that you probably wouldn't normally, unless you were being poked and prodded by me and Shalane to do so. But on that other side of the vulnerability, like on the other side of that discomfort, is that like love and belonging, that sense of inclusion, and that sense of just, I don't know, like goodness that we all are really wanting.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I concur.
I concur. So, with Ignite Your Light, that was our Costa Rica retreat that we facilitated at the beginning of 2023. It already feels like so long ago. So many things have happened.
I know. It's wild. It is wild. You guys, like, I was like, is this when they say time is an illusion? Is that what this is what they're talking about?
Oh, it holds a sweet place in my heart, because that's actually when I announced that I was pregnant for the first time. Remember?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I was
everyone's like,
I know. I was 15 weeks pregnant, I think, during this retreat. And I was the circle of women that came on the retreat were some of the first people to know. And now I'm 3 months postpartum. So, said baby, who was just a tiny little thing, still growing in the womb, is now out in the world. So, I will always think back to our time in Costa Rica, and just thinking of where I was in the pregnancy. It's just so sweet.
yeah, it was, and just even kind of, it is really fascinating. Like things like that. I think people feel safe to share, safe to. Everybody has said it is so interesting that within 1 day, 2 days, I feel like I know these people better than some of my friends.
Hmm.
I think even MaKenzie saying, like this, announcing a pregnancy is always really sensitive, and feeling like she could share with these people who she's their teacher, she's their facilitator, she's supposed to be in charge, and be able to kind of let those doors down or those walls down is a really good indicator of the type of container that we always aim to uphold.
Hmm. They were all so receptive and so supportive. And I think when you mentioned we are looking for the type of people who want to have these deep conversations, maybe it's in the messaging or the way that you and I talk, but that's the people that always show up. And I am always so touched with how kind it's more often women than men, but our first couple of retreats we had a handful of men that came too. So I don't want anyone listening to this thinking that it's only exclusively women, but the people that then do come on these retreats are just absolutely incredible and amazing. And the Ignite Your Light in particular, our theme for this retreat was on dharma, which a lot of you being yoga teachers probably know is kind of the yogic word or concept for your life's purpose, your life's work. And the book that we used to support this theme was the Great Work of Your Life. This is a text by Stephen Cope. It's basically a more accessible version to some people, or it's really inspired by the Bhagavad Gita, which is such a classic text for all yoga teachers to spend time with. If you haven't read the Bhagavad Gita as a yoga teacher, you have a real responsibility to go check that text. But then to help enhance your understanding of it, the Great Work of Your Life book is absolutely amazing for kind of bringing some of these bigger concepts to be a little more accessible.
And I feel like he does a really, really great job is breaking it down into 4 different pillars. And so the first one that he kind of talks about is called look to your dharma. So when you think about dharma, a lot, most people will say like your job or your career or something like that. But I love in this book, he even breaks it down further that it's going to morph throughout your whole life. So if you're meant to be kind of this caretaker, this nurturer, it might start off with you being a nurse, and then it might morph into being a mother, and then it could transform into you maybe taking care of your parents, or maybe you get a job at a school being a nurse and really taking care of kids, or even doing some type of counseling or something like that. So this particular one, he's like, look to something that is, instead of thinking so large, right? It has to be this great thing, that to look a little bit smaller. So he makes things like very, very digestible.
Mm-hmm.
And even like, again, call of the times, if you were like, hey, I'm a nurse, or hey, I'm interested in kind of some of these things, I've always been into, I mean, even myself, like holistic healing, things like that. I'm very like well versed in, herbs you should take for this, or oils to take for this, or, different energy medicine practices. And the call of the times would be if there is a war or something like that where my services would be needed, that could be your purpose. That could be your dharma at the time. It always kind of morphs and changes. So I think him even using, again, the Gita as this reference, and then actually making it something that you're like, sometimes when people speak in stories, sometimes the stories seem so vast and so maybe conceptual that it's really hard for it to be applicable. And I feel like when he talks about, okay, well, think of yourself as a nurse, think of yourself as a mom, think of yourself as a caretaker, like you're like, oh, I could see myself in all of those roles, because all of those are very real and present in our time.
100%. That's really well said. When you're in it, it's much harder to see it.
Mm,
Like think about when you're in a maze, it's hard to kind of see which turn is right and which turn is wrong. But when you zoom out a little bit and you have this sort of bird's eye perspective, it's much easier to see how to effectively and efficiently get from point A to point B. I think the question in general, like when somebody asks, look to your dharma, or when somebody says look to your dharma, which is essentially asking like, what is your life's purpose? That can be such an intimidating question
yeah,
because
and big,
and big,
big.
it feels so loaded. So kind of the genius of really the Bhagavad Gita, and specifically Mr. Cope in the Great Work of Your Life book, is he gives you these sort of like subcategories of, if you're struggling to figure out, to find what your purpose is on the planet, then there's 3 things that you can do. You can
Mm,
bring to mind, what are your gifts? What are you naturally talented at? What are the things that people are complimenting or commending you on or coming to you for guidance? Those are your gifts, and those are the things that you need to trust. Then Shalane said it so beautifully. Oftentimes, it's not this monumental thing. It doesn't have to be big or like Instagram famous. It can be something small, and it's still as important. It's still as valuable. And then the last piece of advice that he kind of gives is like, listen, yeah, for the call of the times. Like, what is happening in the world, or what is happening in your life that is calling you to respond in a certain way, that this might be trying to tell you, hey, your dharma is this thing, because that's presently what you are dealing with, what you are working with. And I think sometimes we deny the situation, right? And then we deny ourselves this opportunity to allow the dharma to change and the dharma to shift.
yeah. Well, and I feel like even in our society, I love that you brought up like an Instagram influencer. Like there's so much value put on being famous, like a Taylor Swift or a, whoever, a Beyonce, a Jennifer Aniston, that like those are glorified dharmas, or, even like a Mother Teresa, like that it has to be that big in order to be important. And I think in this book, he's talking about, okay, if we're going to go over these four pillars, let's talk about the first one, like keep it simple. What's that acronym? Like keep it simple, stupid. We're not going to use the stupid part today.
Silly.
Keep it simple,
Simple, silly.
sweetie. Yeah. It doesn't have to be all of these things. So basically what we did is we're like, okay, if we're using this as a theme, what we did is kind of first day, like, what are some of your gifts? Like we open up the floor to really talk about, hey, what do you think you're good at? What do you think if you could describe like your purpose? And we really started to introduce this idea of dharma. And we had so many different people from different walks of life, whether it be high up at a hotel versus a stay-at-home mom versus somebody who does landscape architect, somebody who, so it's like it kind of spanned all different genres of, people that were moms, that weren't moms, that were grandmas, that people who had never been married or never had kids. Or when I started to talk about what my purpose was, and I heard all of these other people talk about their purpose, it's like they started to see themselves in other people. And you
Mhm.
started to see that. And that's again, when you're talking about how can I make an impact? How can I make a difference? This is why using things like, stories, metaphors, books, things like that to reference that really make it applicable, and then actually have them apply it, makes such a transformative experience for them, because everybody started to see that they weren't the only ones that were experiencing this conflict of
Mhm.
really trying to live a fulfilled life, really trying to find their quote unquote purpose. And so like once we kind of went through that first pillar, it was kind of easy for us to segue like, okay, the next day, which MaKenzie and I try to zip line together often, have yet to do it. Okay.
There's been
This,
two instances.
yeah, we've tried to zip line together twice and it has not worked out. The second pillar that he talks about, it says do it full out. And so like this day, to make it applicable, we actually took them on this beautiful like zip line thing. And I just showed MaKenzie all the pictures because she was pregnant and they wouldn't let her go.
They would not let me go. I could not zip line because I was pregnant. So I missed out on all of the actual implementation of doing it full out. But this concept basically means like once you find that thing that lights you up, and it doesn't have to be big. Once you find that thing, you need to start to do it on purpose. So I think there's like this Dolly Parton quote that's like find out who you are and then start to do it on purpose. And we were kind of illuminating, or maybe foreshadowing is a better word, for this concept when we were saying like what are the things that you're doing right now in your life, and are they in alignment with kind of where you want to go? So it's calling on you to be a little more cognizant, a little more aware and conscious of your actions, and start to take disciplined action to change them, especially if they're not in alignment with your dharma or your purpose. So the first piece is kind of like find out who you are and do it on purpose, and then start to unify all of your actions, organize all of your life's activities in support of that dharma, because that's just going to expedite your process. And that's really like what's so true also of retreats as well. Like when we're talking about healing and like making a real transformation quickly, retreats also facilitate that, because like Shalane was speaking to, even in the first pillar of look to your dharma, when you're surrounded by other people who are kind of bringing to the surface like what they're good at, and you start to see yourself and their story, it's helping like expedite the process of figuring out what you're here to do on this planet. And then you start to get other ideas from other people of, okay, now that I know what that thing is, like how can I start to actually apply it and live it in my life and unify?
Well, and I think even being on the retreat is something that when you're like, do it full out, most people come to a retreat, or most people are curious because they're like, I need something in my life. Something is missing, or I am feeling depleted, or whatever it is. So it's really fascinating. This particular like theme really worked well, because when you're looking to do it full out, you need to be, like MaKenzie was saying, putting yourself in those places, like starting to facilitate all of your life to really revolve around what lights you up. That includes the people, the places, the experience, the activities that you do. So, for example, I feel like this is where a lot of teachers kind of, and MaKenzie and I kind of joke about this. You want to be a really great fucking teacher? Teach 6 a.m. Because you know what you got to do with your life? You got to organize the night before to be fully prepared and on point by 6 a.m. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And really provide a really great experience. And so her and I joke about this because both of us have taught 6 a.m. for long periods of our teaching career. And our life had to shift and change in order to be a great teacher, in order to deliver their message. So whether you are, again, like you're a yoga teacher, you maybe went through yoga teacher training and you're not quite sure exactly what you want to do with it, start to organize your life in such a way that supports you teaching, because it's something that lights you up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, making it less difficult for yourself by organizing your life. That means like, I was like, okay, can't watch TV, got to go to bed early. Like, it means sometimes saying no to things so you can say yes to other things. And that is really how you do it full out, is when you say no to those things that keep you from being that version of yourself that's leveling up into this person who's doing it full out, who's like not half ass, they are full ass, they are in it, you know?
Great point. The last piece on this pillar here, we're only in the second of four pillars, according to this Great Work of Your Life book. The last piece is to practice deliberately, meaning that you're trying to not just show up and be on autopilot or phone it in. That what you're doing, if you found your dharma and if you're trying to do it on purpose and if you're organizing your whole life to help you move down that path, then you need to be practicing in a way that has the intention of being better than the day before. So it's always with the intention of refinement, always with the intention of finding that next layer, that deeper layer.
I'm in this class right now with Joe Dispenza. So some of you might be familiar because I kind of feel like he weaves a bit into that kind of yogic idealism and ideas. But he was like, he talks a lot about meditation and teaches a lot about brainwave frequencies and stuff like this. And he's like, I sit down to meditation and I do not get up until I'm a different person getting up from my meditation. And that's the kind
Wow.
of like practicing deliberately. Like the next day, you have refined your cueing, you have, fine tuned your theming. You are being more mindful and intentional about what you eat, because the yoga of eating can be a mindfulness practice. You speak differently, you react differently. Like, that's practicing deliberately, that you every single day is getting up from your meditation cushion or whatever experience that you're in, that you're different every single time you're introduced to that experience again.
Yeah. So you guys, this is the kind of stuff that we talk about on Rechaka Retreats. This
No.
is the style. This is the vibe and the energy. So hopefully you're already kind of just getting a taste for it and you're enjoying it. The last two pillars of this book, The Great Work of Your Life, after you've looked to your dharma and then you've started to kind of do it full out, the third recommendation that the Bhagavad Gita kind of tells us is that, okay, now that you've done all that, that's the stuff that you can control. Then comes the part that most of us are not so good at, is the releasing of the control, or what the pillar is called of let go of your fruits. So like you've already done as much as you can do. Then the next step is to release. And the beautiful imagery for this one is like if you're drawing back an arrow on a bow and arrow, you can, pull it back and find that perfect amount of tautness of the arrow. You can take aim. You can do all these things to set yourself up for success. But the second that you release that arrow and it flies, then there are so many conditions externally that you can't do anything about. And so, how do we practice more often letting go of the fruits?
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're like, this is the harder part because most of us want to control and think that it needs to have a certain outcome. And he talks about like, instead of, if you've done all of this, if you've pulled back the arrow, you've strung it correctly, it's the right environment, there's no fucking wind or whatever else, and you're like, great, here we go. Like you've done all that you can, you've prepared, you've practiced over and over. So like letting go of the fruits is like once you let go of that arrow, it's going to land wherever it's going to land based on your preparation, based on how you practiced deliberately. It's based on how you've continued to align your life for your purpose, whatever that is. And even if you're a yoga teacher, it could go even deeper. Like this might not be, I mean, there are some people that are so gifted with assists. Yes, they're yoga teachers, but I would say some of their gift is actually their gift of touch. They do it through yoga. And so like when you're letting go of the fruits, this is like sometimes just allowing what you've done to be good enough always, no matter what, and not allowing when difficulties start to kind of percolate and rise. So whether this be a coworker, a parent, a spouse or partner that has maybe something to say about you going to bed early or you saying no to a party so that you can get to bed and get rest for your 6 a.m. class, say, that you don't really allow it to deter you. And if somebody or something is starting to kind of chip at this, that you're not distracted by it, that it's okay for those experiences and those like difficulties or those speed bumps, or maybe you kind of get off this, like you stop practicing yoga for a while because you're teaching so much and you lose your personal practice, that it's okay that those things have happened, but we're always just veering back. We're always just veering back. And MaKenzie, I feel like, I can't remember if it was you or somebody else. I feel like I know I've heard you say this, but there's when you're flying an airplane and it programs the destination into, the pilot puts it in, it's like, here's where we're going to go. It only actually has to be on course about 10% of the time in order for it to land where it's supposed to land. So it's actually off course about 90% of the time. So it's constantly doing this zigging and zagging, back and forth, kind of swerving in and out, this like weave situation. But it really only has to be about 10% of the time that it's on course in order to land where it needs to land. And so if you're continuing to come back to these things, these practices, even if you quote unquote fall off the wagon, like that's okay.
Yeah. That I love that imagery, Shalane. I'm so glad you brought it up. And I think ultimately this pillar of let go of the fruits is just trying to tell you that everything in your life has a purpose and can be included. It's all happening as it should. It's all happening in the right time. And that even those things that you might label as difficulties or roadblocks or hurdles, like Shalane spoke to, are for your development.
Yeah.
And you can turn those problems into the portals
Yeah.
that take you to the place that you want to go. And so one of the subcategories that Stephen Cope has under this particular pillar is turn the wound into the light.
I,
And that's such a beautiful reminder.
I know. I love that. What's funny is whenever I think of that after, teaching so many yoga teachers, I can think of two in particular off the top of my head that really came in and really struggled with sharing their voice, really struggled with being loud enough to hear when they would teach, thought they were very cringe. Like, was that cool? Oh, I don't know if that landed, like really unsure of themselves or having a hard time speaking up. And now both of them teach group classes in front of all of these people when they were so worried about being able to be heard. So it's interesting that this is, and there's backstories to both of these people of why they had a hard time speaking up for themselves, why they had a hard time being heard, why they were always so soft spoken. But now, I mean, it's incredible that when you really look to your dharma, when you really do the thing, you do it on purpose, you let go of the fruits, it allows these experiences that may have been painful to actually be your greatest treasure and gift to people, because you have an understanding, a wisdom that somebody who's never experienced those things could never relate to. It's
Mhm.
really like that's lived wisdom.
And it's really only that experience that gives you the platform to be able to actually speak to it from a place of direct experience,
Yeah.
which is the type of teachers that you want to listen to anyway. Like it's really hard to take advice from somebody who's maybe never been through what you're struggling with. So it all has its place, and it's all perfect. And I think the last thing kind of on this little subcategory is to not necessarily have any expectations. And there's this one sort of rhyme that really seals the deal or makes this concept make sense for me. It's that be with what's real instead of an ideal. Because sometimes I think we think like, this is my dharma, this is my life's purpose, and we have it all mapped out. But that's sometimes an ideal. That's like how we envision things. And that thought then keeps us from being able to notice what's actually happening, what's the real thing.
Yeah.
And so, this principle of let go of the fruits, like let go of your expectations, because maybe the thing that you think should be it is number one, not it, but it's also making you blind to what is right in front of you.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's not it for you. So you may see it in somebody else and you're like, "Oh, I want that," or I want to emulate this person, or I really enjoy this part about them. But even like we talked about in partnerships, like MaKenzie and I bring very different things to the table, which is why our partnership worked and continues to work. It's that we are not the same. We are not trying to be each other. And so when you stop putting these people, whether it be a teacher or somebody else, on a pedestal, or this belief that you have to be this something in order to be really impactful or really great, that particular like subsection really says like, you are good enough as is. Just continue to do this thing of looking to the fruits, or looking to your dharma and letting go of the fruits, looking to your dharma, letting go of the fruits, look, just over and over.
Yeah, it's like lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fourth little principle, according to this book, is turn it over to God.
Mm.
And this is a deepening of really the third principle is the call to really truly surrender and realize that kind of none of this was like yours in the first place, and that the most efficient livers or like the most efficient sort of figures, and that's one of the brilliance of the books is he brings these principles to life through people's lives, whether they were really influential and historical figures or everyday people, and that their dharma becomes just this expression of divinity and love. It's like they're just sort of channeling this gift, or they're receiving this gift from something bigger than themselves. That's when it really becomes embodied.
Yeah. I always kind of, especially after I've done a lot of like work with somebody, or honestly, after a retreat, I feel the same way. And I've shared this with MaKenzie before, but I always kind of say, I always feel well used. I always feel well
Mhm.
used. I feel like my gifts have like channeled through my body. My purpose or my dharma or whatever it is has like moved through me so much, and I've given in such a way that is so rewarding as well. It gives just as much as it takes, and it's effortful, that you feel well used. You feel this like sense of like, even if are making music and you're not the Taylor Swift, you still feel so great after you got up and you performed a song. Like it feels like your gift to the world to be able to songwrite and to be able to impact people through your words, through your lyrics, or through your yoga teaching. That it's not about this accolade that comes, it's about this sensation or this awareness of feeling fulfilled no matter what.
That's so good. And he continues to say that the way, other ways that you can turn it over to God is to walk by faith and to take yourself to zero, which basically means forget yourself in the doing. And yoga, in so many ways, talks about this. It's like losing of the self, a dying of the ego, where the art the artist becomes the art, where the singer becomes the song, the dancer becomes the dance, where there's this enmeshment between you and what you're doing. Full engagement is what we're all after. Being fully absorbed in something is pure bliss, is pure happiness. When we forget our stories, when we forget our stress, when we forget our self-limiting beliefs, that's when we are the most alive and lit up. And what Shalane is talking about, what uses us up, but not in a way that makes us feel depleted, in a way that actually makes us feel really replenished.
I love that you just said that. I also love that for those of you who are going on our Tulum retreat, you're going to know what we're talking about this last little bit. She dropped a little hint of what's to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. So we just wanted to give you a little taste of kind of what else you can expect on a Rechaka retreat. Of course, you're going to get the yoga in the morning, and we do all styles of yoga for every body, of every age, of every experience. All levels are welcome. That's probably the most common question that we get is like, okay, well, how advanced do I have to be? And the answer is you don't ever have to have tried yoga before.
We've had
You can
people
be the
that
most.
have never done yoga before come on our yoga retreat. So it's
Yeah.
open.
So there's that physical aspect. You're going to get yoga practices, but then you're also going to get meditation. And then we also have sort of these dharma talks, or just times that are not necessarily lectures, but just conversations
Yeah.
for us to delve into the reading.
Yeah, kind of like we talked about how we like did, zip lining and really talked about like doing it full out. We really start to marry activities or experiences or depending on again whatever it is, the book or whatever it is that inspires us really starts to inform our entire retreat. So at the end of it, I mean, if you felt like you had so many like golden nuggets and like aha moments during this conversation, like this is it for like, especially if you go to Tulum with us, this is it for the full week. Like prepare to have your
Mhm.
mind blown.
Yeah. And it gets a chance to really settle in deep, and take root in a way that you don't just like go and visit this beautiful destination and be like, oh, I was so inspired when I was there. It actually takes root in your heart, and it's something that you can carry home with you. And I think that's the biggest testament to me, and is literally in our testimonials that we're about to share, is people say like, I was able to come home with actionable steps, with these tools, that it wasn't just like me escaping to the jungle, but it helped me actually return with more clarity and be in more alignment with what I know now is my life's purpose, which is really cool. So Shalane, would you share, go ahead and read one of these. This
Yeah.
is in the words of one of our students.
Yeah, so this retreat was truly magical. I didn't have any expectations, and I was really impressed. The resort was incredible, and all of the yoga, meditation, and educational and discussion was very high quality and inclusive of all skill levels and beliefs. Everything was very genuine, and the courses built on one another in a way that felt very natural and comfortable. Highly recommend the experience.
Here's another one. It says, before this retreat, I was wrapped in my emotional and spiritual shell, lamenting many aspects of my life with a stuck mind. On this last full day of the retreat, I feel as if my path is clear, my mind is flexible, and my soul is excited for the present and future. I have rediscovered parts of myself long gone, parts that made me feel whole and alive, while also uncovering dormant aspects I simply did not think I had. I am forever grateful for the love, kindness, and vision of not only Shalane and MaKenzie, but of the other women on this trip. Gratitude and humility fills me to think I have been afforded such a special opportunity to grow in a beautiful location with beautiful souls.
Amazing writer.
It's like we paid this
Yeah,
person. We did not.
we did not like we sat. So at the end of our retreats, we always kind of get together and we have like a little session where we're like, what went well, what didn't go well, and we were like practically in tears reading some of these. This one says, I appreciated all the levels of the yoga you shared. Your approach was thoughtful and engaging and opened me up to new concepts. The attention to detail from our very first introduction via email registration and throughout the retreat was above and beyond anything I expected. I hope to bring both of my daughters and several friends to the future ones. I know who this is, and she did bring both of her daughters, and their testimony is very much the same.
Yeah. And then last one, this one's short. It said, I had an amazing experience. I was able to relax and unwind, to leave work behind and focus on my hurting and healing. That's what it's about, my friends. And that is what is awaiting you on our Rechaka retreat. And we have something so special coming up this April of 2024, if you're listening in real time. So, Shalane, can you tell us just a little bit about our Tulum retreat?
Yeah, our Tulum retreat is kind of MaKenzie dropped a little bit of a hint on the last little bit, but this particular retreat is called Recharge. It's really understanding how to actually recharge your own battery so that you're not relying on things like dopamine hits from doom scrolling or coffee or whatever it is, or that you always necessarily have to do something. And so we're going to talk about like all of these practices and rituals that really enrich your life that you can do every single day to actually make you feel more vibrant, more alive, more awake. And I would even say like age in reverse. I might even go that far to say that. It's we're really excited about this one. It's in Tulum, which is it's a stunning location. This resort is right on the beach, and all the food is included except for one particular meal where we go out and we support the local culture and commerce and eat out at one of the restaurants there. But we have a whole slew of really fun activities and things like that that go along with this theme.
Yeah. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to www.rechaka retreats, RECHAKA retreats, retreats.com/Tulum, TULUM. And just for listening, as a special thank you for being a part of the MYYT community, you can use the code MYYT at checkout for a special 10% off discount. And you're going to want to do this quickly, you guys, because our rooms are selling all the time. Just the other day, one of our nicest rooms, like the most deluxe room, we're talking like open the door and you're basically on the beach in the ocean. That one just sold the other day. We're about halfway sold out and just about 6 or so weeks away at the time of this recording. So it's coming up quick and we want you to come with us. So make sure you take advantage of that special discount code. And you can also check out the link in the show notes just in case that came at you too quick.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. We love all of our retreats, but it's always fun to, this one's a little bit longer than some of the others, which I feel like just makes it a little extra juicy. And the Tulum area, the Mayan culture is really, really fascinating and such a beautiful culture. So I'm really, really pumped for that.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Shalane, for coming on the podcast. And everybody who is listening, if this resonated with you, if you've had any strokes of insight or got any wisdom from the episodes, if you would please take a screenshot and share it to your social media. Up on your Instagram stories, don't forget to tag both at Master Your Yoga Teaching as well as at Rechaka Retreats. So that we can reshare it. And then Shalane, if you would, please tell us a little bit about how all of the people listening can find you and get more plugged into all the awesome stuff that you offer.
Yeah, I'd love to have you in my Instagram community. It's at Shalane_Carter, SHALANE_Carter, CARTER. And then I'd also like to give all of your listeners a little free I call it my energy espresso guide. To 5 practices to raise your vibe in 5. So really, really simple, like energy practices, meditation, things like that for you. And it's free. So I'm going to give it to all you guys as well.
Awesome. We'll make sure to drop that in the show notes. So take advantage of all the things, you guys. And thank you again for coming back each and every week for your dose of wisdom. And now, the moment that you've been waiting for. The 3 winners of the review raffle are, drumroll please, Breezy Rodriguez, Dara Newman, and Megan Bateman. Congratulations. And thank you to everybody for taking the time to submit a 5-star rating and review of the show. I am so, so grateful and excited to send Breezy, Dara, and Megan $100 coming your way. Thanks for listening. If this is your first time, peruse our feed to see if there's something else that will serve you. We're so grateful that you're here and invite you to join our inner circle by subscribing to our newsletter. If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word by sending it to a friend who needs to hear this message. Likes, follows, sends, shares, and reviews help us to continue delivering high-quality content to you for free each and every week. Don't forget to tag @MasterYourYogaTeaching so we can reshare. I am a certified yogi. However, this podcast is intended for information and entertainment only. If you are interested in mentorship or coaching with me, check out the website linked in the show notes to get more information. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on the podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of MaKenzie or CLW Studios. Learn more about MaKenzie, her guests, and CLW Studios by following the links in the show notes. Keep shining, and we will see you next Wednesday for another dose of Master Your Yoga Teaching. Namaste blessed.